If the square footage on the house is 1495, I'm writing it up at 1501. If you really want to measure, more power to you.
Today on Time to Discuss, I have Bob with me. Bob, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Bob, you have an interesting story. You went from being a chemist to being a real estate agent. So, I kind of want to start. I haven't spoken to any chemists at all yet. So, I'd like to talk just briefly about what it was like being a chemist, and then I want to focus on this journey from chemist to real estate agent. So, let's start with that. As a chemist, what was that like? Your day to day being a chemist?
Well, essentially, I worked in the lab 12-hour shifts, essentially testing products. The company that I worked for, we basically made stuff that went into everything else. So we made like the gel that goes in the baby diapers and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, I originally started on the plant and I worked on the plant doing grunt work for about the first year and a half. And then, based on my intelligence, they moved me into the lab. I was actually the last person to move into the lab that was grandfathered in without a 4-year degree, which is really what started the whole real estate process. Was I eventually started to go back to school, and I'm sitting in freshman chemistry with my own lab coat with my name on it, my own supplies, and I am completely miserable. And something about that, it just triggered me, and it was like, okay, I need to make a change. And I started buying real estate, and I realized that I enjoyed the hunt and the search for the real estate, the process, way more than I did anything else. So my ex-wife and I, we put together a 3-year plan. I got it done in two, and I walked out of the lab in April of 2007 and never looked back.
I'm going off of my memory here. So 2007, that was right around the time of the
That's
real
the
estate.
recession. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so was that before? So did you finish and then that happened, or was it kind of like in the middle? I can't remember the timeline.
We were in the recession when I went full time in real estate, which everybody told me I was an idiot for doing.
What's your outlook now, as far as like real estate goes? What's your opinion now?
I think it's like anything else. We what it comes down to is we have a housing shortage. That's really why numbers are where they are right now. It's not so much the interest rate. Interest rates were always high and then finally dropped for those few years. So we kind of got used to that feeling. If we had tons of inventory, it wouldn't be an issue, but we have no inventory because of COVID. A lot of the foreclosure market that is normal has still not recovered and popped back out there because a lot of people, you took advantage of the government programs or waited them out before selling their property. So you're not seeing the foreclosure levels that we had pre-COVID. We just not.
So let's talk about more of this the 2 year journey of becoming a real estate agent. How did you, or getting into real estate, I should say, what was the education like for that? How did you actually get started from an educational perspective?
At the time, a lot of the local companies had a essentially a pre-licensing course. So you could go to either night classes or day classes or a mix. I worked 12-hour shifts at the chemical plant, both nights and days, so I was able to fit it in when I could. And sometimes I would just ping pong back and forth. I mean, you're not really getting a whole lot of sleep, but it is what it is, and you're dealing with it. So we did the pre-licensing course, and then at that point, you're pretty much okay. We'll go take the class now. The funny thing about real estate is the state test is different for every state because obviously every state is different, but the national test is the same. For whatever reason, a lot of people fail the real estate exam. I'm happy to say I passed it the first time, but a lot of it to me is just common sense and a little bit of math. And you just go in and do it. So it to me, I didn't, other than the lack of sleep, I didn't find it particularly, difficult in any way, shape, or form. But you got to figure, when I went full-time real estate at 35 years of age, that's the first time I'd ever had one full-time job. Prior to that, I always had some sort of side hustle. Even as a chemist, raising kids and doing all of that, I was still, working some sort of side job, all the time.
So now when you were doing these courses, is this like a self-paced thing? Is it like a 6 month program? What's that actually look like?
This one was pretty much a 8 weeks, cram it in there if you want to get it done course. And that's the way I chose to do it. Again, you get used to working 12-hour shifts. You just get used to not sleeping a whole lot. And so you just deal with it. So I didn't want to miss my opportunity, and I was motivated to get it done because I felt like it was something that I could do and do well. So I basically just put my head down and slammed through the courses as fast as I possibly could and never really looked back. And again, it's something that was important to me. I was motivated to do. So that made it a lot easier to tackle it. It wasn't like I was doing it because I had to. It was something that I was excited about and looking forward to.
So let's talk about the those exams you talked about. Now I know if someone's an aspiring attorney, they take the bar, they can only take it certain times during the year. It's not offered all the time. When it comes to the real estate exams, are they offered anytime? Is it only like 2 times a year? What does that typically look like?
Typically, I know in the state of Virginia, you can typically take it nowadays once a month. At the time, it was typically every 2 months. And of course, even now, you still have to go in and sit down and do it the proper way. So, in other words, you walk into an enclosed testing room and you've got somebody watching you so you're not cheating, stuff like that. It's not open book. So, you've got to know your material ahead of time, as opposed to I was a Class A contractor, and that's an open book test because it's so much information. So, I mean, certainly it was definitely nerve wracking. And if I remember correctly, the original test is about a 3 hour test. And like I said, there's a lot of people that fail that test. So I was happy at the end of the day, I don't know what I got. All I know is 70 was passing and I passed. So it could have been a 72, could have been a 92.
Let's shift gears. Let's talk about your day to day. What's it like your day to day being a realtor?
When you're first starting out, a lot of your day to day is you're learning from, let's say, your mentor or your team leader or whoever you're working for is supposed to be educating you on how to do what we do. Obviously, there's a little bit of sales aspect in this job, but that's very, very small amount. There's contract work, which again is a very small amount. What it really comes down to is experience and education and understanding what we do from day to day, which is listen. Quite honestly, 90% of what I do is listening and paying attention. Okay, what type of house do you want? Okay, well, we know that we're going to be looking in my case, it's going to be Norfolk and Virginia Beach, and we're looking at this price point. We've got young children, so we're concerned about school systems. These are the type of things. Typically, in on any given day, it's going to be get up, knock out the most important task at hand, and then if I've got any scheduled appointments, I review those, whether it's a listing appointment or it's a buying appointment, making sure that I'm prepared and ready to go. And then it's, following up on either past clients or possible new clients or kind of a blend of both. And sometimes there's just days where, okay, well, I'm going to take most of the day off and take care of some personal obligations or, that's the beauty of my job that I can take a free hour and go run to the grocery store if I want to, depending on what I've got going on. Or quite honestly, cut in a whole day off and go spend the day with my father if I choose to. I'm not, a lot of people are very much into a routine. I'm not really a routine guy, so I'm kind of against the norm. I've had multiple heart attacks and a quadruple bypass, so I had some health challenges. So there are days when I don't feel good, which means I'm not going to get a whole lot done. So on the days that I'm motivated and pumped, I'm slamming through stuff and getting things done and making phone calls and I'm upbeat and doing my thing. And on a day when I don't feel good, I'm going to do, quite honestly, probably do the bare minimum to get through the day and get through the most important things and try to just relax and listen to my body when it tells me you're tired, you need to stop.
So what about some of the behind the scenes things that your clients don't necessarily see? So, obviously when someone's selling a house, someone has to take the photos. Is that the realtor that does that? Do you contract with the photographer? What kinds of things like that we don't typically see when you're working with a realtor?
Well, here's the thing. Real estate's a funny thing because it's not a physical job. So you don't see what we're doing. And I actually take it a step further to where I am known almost as the anti-real estate agent to the point of it's 2024. I don't put signs in the yards. I'm not doing open houses. And this is my opinion, and I get yelled at for this by other agents, but I stand by it and I always tell my people up front, in what other world would you allow strangers to walk through your house in an open house? Think about that. What if prescription drugs, guns, collectibles, whatever the case may be, you're literally opening your home to strangers. I think it's ridiculous and stupid, and I don't do it. The other thing is it creates the illusion that we're working because you physically see me there for 2 hours on a Sunday. Wow, look at Bob. He took time out of his day. I'm not getting paid to stand around and let strangers walk through your home. what I'm getting paid for is all up in here, the almost 20 years of knowledge, of experience, of the neighborhood, of the understanding of what people are looking for and why they want it and how to negotiate. And quite honestly, being able to tell you honestly what your house is worth, regardless of what you think. At the end of the day, that's one of the beauties of real estate is the numbers don't lie. If you're in a neighborhood and the houses are worth between 325 and 350, guess what? Your house is worth between 325 and 350. And I have all of this data that tells me, okay, your house is going to be on the market for 25 days. It's going to sell for 335, and there's no magic marketing. There's nothing that I could do to make that come or go any faster than that. It doesn't exist. So there's a lot of that type of stuff. There's conversations with other agents. There's the subtle stuff that we do. So if I know an agent is calling and checking on my property, then I'm going to tell her, well, we don't have an offer yet, but we're getting a lot of interest. Now, the house may have only been on the market 2 days. So let's be honest, how much interest am I getting? But I'm certainly not going to tell her that. So there's a little bit of that sort of where there's a little bit of white lie that goes into real estate. Let's not kid ourselves. And most states are buyer beware. Now, obviously you don't want to break the rules and do anything that's going to hurt your client, or you don't want to sell a house where you have obvious issues. But at the same time, if the square footage on the house is 1495, you can daggone sure bet I'm writing it up at 1501, because 1501 is a cutoff point. It just is. Whether anybody likes it or not, that's a buyer beware issue. If you really want to measure and then come back and tell me the house is 1495, more power to you. But most people want that cutoff, and I'm listing that sucker at 1501. Sorry. So it's a lot of that type of stuff. It's thinking on your feet. It's when you get multiple offers, what type of offers are there? What type of agent are we dealing with? Because that plays a factor in it too. If I'm dealing with an agent that I know is a hard case and doesn't get back to me in a timely fashion and only cares about the money, as opposed to an agent that brings me an offer, that agent that's easy to work with, understands how things work, and we can move along a little bit faster, I'm going to give my clients that information and they can make a decision from there. Sometimes the highest offer is not the best offer. A lot of times it's numbers, it's how long can you wait to move. There's all sorts of factors that are involved with that.
It's so fascinating, Bob. I appreciate the honesty and the candor. That's really, really cool. It's very eye-opening.
Well, here's an example of that. I've got a new listing right now, and my client has he's got solar and he has to pay it off at closing, or we can get the buyer to take over the payments. Now in Virginia, and a lot of states still are not real big on solar, and they're also not real big on wanting to take over somebody else's loan. He has a provision in it that if he pays $6,500, then that solar price point never changes and stays at $79 a month. So what I'm getting paid to do is that once we get a buyer on that house, it's my responsibility to convince that buyer and that buyer's agent that, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give you $6,500, because let's be honest, $6,500 is a lot better than 20 grand. And you're going to take over the payments. You're not going to have an electric bill. You're going to pay $79 a month until doomsday when this thing is paid off. That's where my skill and experience and intelligence pays off, because at the end of the day, he went into it before he was going to list the property, assuming I got to pay this 20 grand. And I'm going, no, there's another way to look at this. That's how I make my money. That's where my commission more than pays for itself. This is not an expensive house. So if anything, I'm saving him, 13 grand in money at the end of the day by being smart enough to go, let's negotiate this in. And let's not put that into the listing. I want that buyer to be excited about the property. I want them to put the offer in, and then I'm going to hit them with, oh, by the way, we've got this. Now, you and I both know my seller at the end of the day is not going to walk away from a good buyer. And if he's got to pay that 20 grand, he's going to. But having the ability to be able to negotiate that after that buyer is locked in, because at that point they're emotional about it. They've pictured all of their stuff there and their children there and all of the stuff that goes with that. So we've got them 3/4 of the way in the door. So more than likely, they're going to be willing to negotiate. And if I swing it from the perspective of, hey, we're going to do you a favor and give you $6,500 to pay down this debt, Now you only owe 13 and a half and you're locked in at $79 a month. They're never going to know that the fact of the matter is that my client, whether we like it or not, if they pushed us far enough, he's going to pay the 20 grand. But most people don't think about it in that direction. So it's my job to look at those angles. And at the end of the day, if you're my client, I'm fighting like a piranha for you, and whether you like it or not, that's all I care about is my client. Whether anybody else likes it or not, I'm going to negotiate just as hard and fast and as strongly as I possibly can. Period.
I get the impression that you don't necessarily have to go to college to be a real estate agent. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, in your experience, do many agents take on some kind of marketing experience or other kinds of sales trainings, for lack of better words? Like the way you were talking about the sales, it was, you know, being very emotional and knowing that it's emotional and knowing they're invested at the emotional level. Is that just something that you intuitively picked up on, or did you get that through your training? What does that look like?
Well, they have multiple training options available to you, and most of your larger brokerages have their own training groups and organizations that they will go through and they will teach that. My biggest problem with a lot of that training is they have a tendency to try to focus on the details and not focus on the individual. So it ends up a situation where the agent is on the phone going, "Hello, I can help you buy a home." And they try to push out the individual human being behind that. So my attitude, and when I mentor and coach young agents, is yes, you need to know how to talk to people and all of that, but at the same time, you need to be yourself. If you're a guy that likes to go surf every day, then talk about what you know, live your life and be who you are, and people will respect you and understand that you're a personality and a human being. You have to play to your strengths. So yes, the other thing is a lot of agents and a lot of brokers will recommend that you at least get some basic understanding of math and English and things of that nature, because you don't want to start sending texts out to other clients or with full of broken English, and you're sending emails to where nobody can read them, you know, unless it's part of your thing, and that's fine and dandy. But for the most part, you've got to, use a little bit of brain power behind that and be smart about that. It just depends. So I think it's important to get some amount of sales training, but hopefully if you're partnered with somebody or somebody at your organization is going to, at the end of the day, allow you to be yourself and let your personality shine.
Switching gears, earlier you talked about, at the very beginning, you talked about looking the ability to acquire properties, the hunting, the finding of these properties. If I want to invest in a property, just a strictly investment, can I work with a real estate agent? Is it a special type of real estate agent? What does that typically look like?
I recommend most investors work with real estate agents, because typically the real estate agent is going to have his ear, a good real estate agent is going to have his ear to the ground and is going to know what's available and what sort of neighborhood that it's involved in and the best way to go about it. Case in point, a lot of newbie real estate agents will jump at the first opportunity to buy a property, even if it doesn't make good sense, because they want to buy a property. A good real estate agent will stop them and say, "No, we don't need to buy this property." You don't buy something just to buy it, especially if it's in a neighborhood that, let's be honest, has been picked over. And if there's 25 real estate flips in that neighborhood, ain't nobody buying in that neighborhood. They're not. I don't care what you do to that house. Why would you buy a house, even if you're getting it for 50 grand and you're flipping it for 150? If your competition and there's 25 other properties for sale in that neighborhood at 150, you ain't doing anything special, and put your money in your pocket. So a good real estate agent will stop that investor and go, "Do you want to buy something, or do you want to buy the right property?" And that separates the wannabe investors from the big boy investors that take their time and do things right. I enjoy going and playing poker, and I equate it to poker. You have the 70-year-old old guy that keeps his mouth shut, plays poker every day, and walks away with $300 or $400 in his pocket, as opposed to the 22-year-old who has the sunglasses on, can play with his chips, and knows all the lingo, but still loses $200 or $300 every day. Do you want to pretend to be a poker player, or do you want to be the poker player? I'd much rather be the 70-year-old old dude that keeps my mouth shut, and every day he's walking out the door with extra money. And let's be honest, and the ego plays a part in that, and I'm guilty of that. When I first started buying rental property myself, I thought I was king of the world. Hey, I own rental property. Ooh, look at me. I own two of them. Then I own three of them. The problem was I got myself in trouble because I didn't have enough capital to cover my expenses when my tenants didn't want to pay the bill. So, you learn a valuable lesson from that, and that plays into it. So you've got to be patient. So yes, you definitely, I believe you need to find a good real estate agent that you mesh well with. And sometimes it's not even about experience. If you meet a real estate agent and they're hungry and they want to do what needs to be done, by all means use them. They're going to have somebody that's going to help them make better decisions, but you want somebody that's hungry and ready to work.
Are there different real estate agents with different specializations? And I'm thinking like, I'm looking for a condo, I'm looking for commercial property, I'm looking for a house, does it just not matter?
There are definitely differences. So you have commercial real estate agents, which obviously are dealing with commercial buildings and things of that nature. Even within my industry, you have what I would say, niche people that do certain things. In my case, I do my regular properties, my regular buyers and sellers, but I also do specialize in bank-owned properties and short sales, which is a whole other subject within to itself. And I've been doing short sales since 2008 and deliberately jumped into them because nobody else was doing them. So I learned them on the ground running. And a lot of agents are scared to death of them and won't mess with them. So that works out. And there's other agents that, let's say, do specialize in high-end areas that, let's be honest, I can't get my foot in the door. A case in point there, whether I like it or not, there are certain parts of Virginia Beach that certain agents have pretty much locked down to where it's almost a private community. They're all $1 million plus houses. And most buyers know somebody within that neighborhood that's going to call that agent first because he put his stamp on that way before I ever came along. And, I may not fit correctly for that $1 million plus buyer. It may not be my wheelhouse. I don't know those people. And let's be honest, 9 out of 10 times I dress like a ragamuffin anyway. So I'm not a suit and tie guy. So that agent that's locked down that neighborhood knows that neighborhood like the back of his hand, knows all the players. And you can't blame them for going in that direction. Obviously, I would love to have multiple $1 million listings. But at the same time, if we put, my numbers against his numbers, he's going to win every time because he knows that neighborhood and there's not a thing I can do about it. And sometimes that's just okay. You're not going to get them all.
Going back to someone that wants to enter this career, that maybe they heard the glory stories, they think real estate might be for them. What would you say that how would you know if the real estate industry is right for you? How do you know if you are the right person to be a real estate agent?
Honestly, for the most part, anybody can do it if they have the right attitude and have the passion for it, but don't quit your day job. To start part-time. You can do this industry part-time and start to build up. You can even be on a team and do part-time. You may find yourself in a situation that very quickly, if you're at the end of the year, and I'll take it back to my example. In 2006 and 2005, when I worked at the chemical plant, I typically on an average year, based on my salary, I walked away with about 45 to 50 grand. Regardless of what I was doing, that was my salary. So my thought process was, okay, I'm working real estate part-time and I'm making 25 grand. So the thought being that if I worked real estate full-time, I could at least go back to my normal income. I'm not going to lose anything. I can double my income and continue and move forward. So you really have to look at it from that perspective. You jump into it and you do it part-time and you just make it work. And everybody acts like it's the most difficult thing in the world, but you don't have to tell anybody. Most of my early clients didn't know that I worked at the chemical plant. Now I would simply say, well, Bob, can you show property, Friday at 9 a.m.? I have another appointment that day. No, I'm actually at work that day. Or I got off work that morning and I need to get a couple of hours of sleep. So you can, quite honestly, you can manipulate and work that any way you see fit. And most people aren't going to know the difference. Now, there's nothing wrong with being part-time if you want to make it full-time and you have the passion for it. I think separates a lot of people that are part-time to where they do 4 deals a year and that's it. Those people, it doesn't work. In my opinion, you cannot do 4 deals a year and know what you're doing because you're not in the industry every single day. It just doesn't work. But if you're part-time because you're building the full-time, you're in the office, you're learning, you have a taste for it, a passion for it, that's a whole different ballgame. That's the guy that I want to be working for me because I know they're going to do everything they can in their power to get it done and listen and pay attention.
So you made a good point talking about showings with different times for different people. I tend to think of working with a realtor as kind of nights and weekends. Are those typically what your hours are when you're working with people, or like sprinkled in with some during the day, or is it a healthy balance? What do the hours look like?
Typically, even in our modern world, it's still going to be weekends and weekends and weeknights. But that's the funny thing with the technology now. A lot of time we will do. I'll preview property, so I'll just go run and look at the house at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because I know what they're looking for, and I can walk in and eliminate something very quickly because let's be honest, pictures lie. The other thing is that if we're dealing with a long distance client, like I've got a client coming out of Tennessee, we do a lot of FaceTime stuff at 1 or 2 in the afternoon because there's no reason for her to come here, until we put the offer in, until we move forward. And with the modern technology, we can do it that way. So it's just a blend, and it's part of the job, and it's always been understood. And when I was married, it was understood. Okay, well, this is what I'm going to be doing because it's got to be done. And at the end of the day, if I spend 2 hours on a Saturday from 7 to 9 working, and I put 10 grand in my pocket, well, that's a fair trade-off. Sorry, but it is. Folks got to work. Much like moms and dads at regular jobs miss soccer practice and sometimes miss soccer games on Saturday morning. It happens. It is what it is. It's got to be done sometimes. And typically you can adjust and reschedule depending on what that client's needs are and, quite honestly, what your needs are.
Bob, typically when I do these conversations, towards the end, I like to give the person I'm speaking with the opportunity to talk about a project they're working on, a cause they believe in, or their business. So if you have something you'd like to talk about, I'd love to hand the floor over to you for the next couple of minutes.
Okay, I'm going to give you two things. Number one, you can always reach me at whatbobthinks.com, where my editor and I are in the process of releasing my first book. It's a video course. It's called Want More, Take More. It's basically the principles and the tools that I use to transition from chemistry to real estate and then rebuild my business after my 2 heart attacks and my quadruple bypass. They can also find me at Bob the Agent and What Bob Thinks on all of the socials. You know how that goes, the TikTok, the Instagram, blah, it is what it is. The other thing that I'm passionate about is I've got a good friend of mine that runs this year we had the first Virginia Black Film Festival, and we'll be doing that next year, and I'm on the board for that. And we showcase movies and aspiring movies and artists and people of that nature. So we're real excited about that. We had a very good, successful year this year at Hampton University, and eventually we want to move it around to other historically Black colleges in Virginia and perhaps expand from there. So we're already starting to lay the groundwork for next year. So we're excited about that too. And I'm just happy to be on board and be a part of the process.
That all sounds fantastic. I'll make sure I get all those links from you. I'll put them in the show notes. I'll put them in the description. They'll go on my website as well. So when people are trying to find you and your information, there's an easy way for them to do that.
Definitely. And they could always shoot me an email or give me a phone call. I'm old. I still answer the phone. So I'm weird like that.
I love that. Bob, it's been absolutely awesome having you on Time We Discussed, and we learned what it's like to transition into being a realtor.
Awesome. I'm here to help. If you guys need anything, let me know.